Welcome to Horror Melee,
a podcast born of a group of people who love to talk and debate horror.
Every episode, one of us picks a movie to review, and the rest of us must either suffer or enjoy that pick.
Turn your brain off and enjoy.
On this episode of Horror Melee, I am your host, Stephanie, and we have Holly.
Hello.
And filling in for Patrick, special guest DJ.
Hello, hello.
On this episode, we are going to discuss the 1983 vampire thriller, The Hunger. Directed by Tony Scott, stars Catherine Deneuve, David Bowie, and Susan Sarandon. This film is a loose adaptation of the 1981 novel of the same name by Whitley Strieber, with a screenplay by Ivan Davis and Michael Thomas, and it is Scott's feature directorial debut. Approximately 200 years after turning into a vampire, John Blaylock, played by David Bowie, begins suffering insomnia and ages years in only a few days. John realizes that Miriam, played by Catherine Deneuve, the ageless Egyptian vamp who turned him, was only partially true in her promise that periodically killing and feeding upon human victims would give him immortality. He will have eternal life, but not eternal youth. John seeks out Dr. Sarah Roberts, played by Susan Sarandon, a gerontologist who specializes in the effects of rapid aging in primates. As John decays in a coffin, Miriam seduces Sarah to be her next forever lover. Sarah then must figure out what is happening and decide if she can live the life of a bloodlust addict. So, I love a steamy, erotic vampire thriller, and we haven't talked about a vampire flick yet. This movie has been on my list for a while. I'm surprised it's not more well known, and I'm surprised that Holly, our resident goth, has never seen it, especially because she's a Susan Sarandon super fan.
Don't judge me.
It's definitely different than most vampire movies, as it focuses on the vampire's internal conflict versus a vampire being a blood-sucking monster. I find that this movie was similar to Interview with the Vampire, which also highlights an emotional vampire and their journey being a vampire. The Hunger received mixed reviews upon its release and was particularly criticized for being heavy on atmosphere and visuals, but slow on pace and plot. Roger Ebert described the film as an agonizingly bad vampire movie. So, was this movie too artsy?
It tried to be artsy in too many ways.
DJ, your thoughts on that?
Like, it couldn't stay focused on anything. I was so stoked when Bauhaus opened and set the atmosphere, this like cool London underground, obviously London. It says it's in New York, but it's obviously London. In like 95% of the shots. But they set the scene, and it was like going to be this, the Lost Boys. It had kind of the Lost Boys aesthetic, and it was cool. And then just like 180s into, okay, like this couple with this 18th century background, and they're playing classical music. And that's kind of what the scene is, or that's the atmosphere of the film for the rest of it.
Yeah.
I like the way you put it, DJ, when you said in the wrong ways. It was artsy, but I don't know. I don't think it was too artsy. It was just done in a very disjointed way. I'm trying to not use the word disjointed, but that's the only word I could think of right now. It was focusing way too much on just the atmosphere, which I loved. I did like it. And but I felt like it focused way too much on that. And then my questions about character development weren't answered.
Yeah, they did not develop the characters beyond lusting after each other.
No, but I don't know. I'm conflicted about this movie just because I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I finished watching it the first time because, I have never seen it. So I finished watching it the first time. I was like, I'm kind of in love with this movie. How have I never seen this? I was slightly confused by it just because a lot of my questions weren't answered. So I watched it again and I was like, oh, okay, well, I wasn't missing anything the first time around. It was my questions were not answered. So then I started like way high and then I just kind of got knocked down, but I still really enjoyed it. I don't think it was agonizingly bad. That's a little harsh.
Keep in mind that he's watching this in the 1980s, whereas when I watched this, I thought, oh, great, this is going to have a 1980s vibe to it. And I'm going to get so many Venetian blinds and flowy sheets. And
you got flowy sheets.
Yeah, a little girl who's like, oh, you need some Quaaludes? I took them from my mom. I'm like, yes, 1980s Quaaludes.
My mom's got everything.
Not glorifying drugs. Yeah, but just the accessibility of drugs. Also, segue. One thing that Susan Sarandon said that intrigued her about this was the idea of could you live forever as an addict? And in the 80s, there were lots of drugs, lots of addiction happening, and definitely not support like we have in the, 2000s, 2019. Do you think there was something being told through that addiction and kind of comparing it to the time being in the 80s of lots of people being like addicts?
I didn't think of it through this lens.
Already getting real deep, guys.
I read that same quote by Susan Sarandon about living with addiction, and I had not made that connection. It didn't give me anything to make me say, oh yeah, I can see connections to addiction. After she said it, I was like, okay, yeah, I can see then like how she approached her character. It was too heavy-handed in the art department to have a strong message like that.
I think in the terms of codependence, you could draw infinite parallels the entire film, but it was like her rejecting addiction and like accepting addiction, and it's interesting to think of it in that lens.
It's interesting because vampires are addicted to blood. They can't survive unless they have blood, and usually they're depicted as monsters. Vampires are blood addicts.
This movie made me think of, or made me reflect on vampires and the archetypes that they are. What is it? The lover, there's another one that I was thinking of, but I can't remember it. But I was just wondering to myself, like, what makes vampires so alluring? You were saying like the bloodlust and everything, but usually we have like the two separate ideas of what a vampire is. You get the bloodlust part, and then you get the suave, sophisticated, well-traveled person, and it is very alluring to want to know a person like that. And then they're also a monster, and that also plays into the duality that everybody has. Like, people have good and bad inside them, and I don't know, it's just reflecting a lot on how we relate to vampires and like who they are in stories for us.
One thing I liked about this movie is they kept the vampire simple. They didn't like change their face like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. They didn't have any dumb CGI like messing up the vibe. They also didn't have fangs. I liked that they had a classic 80s drug necklace, but instead of coke, it had a little knife in it.
Oh, an ankh. I love it.
And they only fed once a week. they had a pretty strict schedule, and they were able to go outside, but they were definitely covered up. They definitely didn't turn any lights on in their house. It was all mood, natural dusk lighting. So moody. And echoing what you said, the allure of vampires, Catherine Deneuve or Miriam, she so smoothly and coyly seduced Sarah Roberts and didn't put any effort into it, but just a gaze,
And telepathy.
Yes.
Don't forget the telepathy.
Yeah, once she had her number and clutched to her heart, it was like they were connected.
It was beautiful, by the way. Just their entire interaction.
So so the movie, Pete, when you read a few lines about the movie, they call it a love triangle, but
no, David Bowie is not involved whatsoever.
No,
he's in a box.
Oh,
she put him in a box.
Yeah.
What's in the box? It's David Bowie
and everyone else you've ever dated.
Yeah, talk about codependence and never leaving or never being able to let go. So in the movie, after 200 years, all of a sudden, John Blaylock, played by David Bowie, starts turning super old. He sees Dr. Sarah Roberts on the TV, gets information, finds out she's in New York, and finds out that she's studying these progeria?
Yeah.
Which is a real disease, by the way. Mm-hmm. Kids who have it die at 16. So she's studying progeria, and he goes to see her, and he ages 20 years while waiting in a waiting room.
Which was really well done, in my opinion. The practical effects and makeup were top notch in this film.
Yes, they were.
Yeah. For 1983, David Bowie looking like 100-year-old and decaying. I believed it.
Same.
Mm-hmm.
And then as he gets home after waiting in the waiting room, who wouldn't feel 20 years older after waiting 2 hours in a doctor's office? He tries to confront Miriam about it, and she's like, "Oh, you're not gonna die, but I'm gonna put you up in the attic,
and I can't kiss you. I won't give you a kiss." That was so cringy.
I know, right? He's just like, "Come on, kiss me." It's like you're a really old grandparent being like, "Come on, give grandma a kiss," and you're like, "Oh, I don't want to." So she has this, beautiful attic with nonstop Beyonce fans and flowy sheets and white doves flying around. And all of her past lovers. There's 5 coffins there.
At least.
And she tells Lolia, "Please keep him company." Literally says "Hey, my other ex lovers. Here's my newest ex-lover. Please keep him company." And then they just sit, and she's literally "You're going to sit in darkness and you can hear and
it's not
feel."
Like they're ghosts. They're still alive. They're just little corpses. That's the thing is last 200, the vampiric effects only last 200 years and then wear off and you're just a corpse and you can't die.
That's awful.
Yeah.
Maybe it is codependence. Maybe she represents the addict more so than other characters, but she just keeps him around.
Baby girl, get some crystals, light some candles. Do a love letter, burn it, and let them, move on.
Put them in a dumpster or something.
Right? Burn their ashes and set them to sea or something.
Good. Yeah, that's better.
So then after she puts David Bowie in the attic to rot with everybody else, Dr. Sarah Roberts comes over and wants to check in on... I'm just going to call him David Bowie, whatever. His character is John Blaylock, but whatever, it's David Bowie. Come on.
Yeah.
And Miriam is like, all right, you're going to be my new lover. What did you think about Miriam's seduction of Dr. Sarah Roberts?
I think the seed was already planted when she was signing books and just came over to fuck. She was wearing no bra and a white t-shirt, drinking sherry, which she doesn't like, but is just like drinking sherry. And of course spills it. So you knew it was done from the get-go. The deal was sealed.
Yeah. And okay, so Holly, as a Susan Sarandon superfan, one thing that I heard Susan Sarandon changed was that originally Dr. Sarah Roberts was supposed to be quote unquote drunk during that scene, but Susan Sarandon was like, no, I know what I'm doing. I want to make this a level playing field. I have no problem, like, you know, having a sip of sherry and getting into making sweet, sweet love with Catherine Deneuve.
I agree with that. No, I like that. Because with vampires too, it's, you know, they have that power to hypnotize and use some level of telepathy. So there would be no reason for a person to feel like they should have to get drunk or, you know, lower inhibitions, because it's like, you know, the vampire already has a hold on them. So I totally agree with that. But it was cheesy as hell.
Wait, well, what part was cheesy as hell?
The whole, oops, I got some on my shirt.
Hang on, the statue looks like you? No, it didn't look like her. Maybe it was like alluding to that literally was, you know, she was what the statue was made from, but like, so cheesy. Just the nose was all wrong.
Well, since we're talking about it, I mean, this was the most notable scene, Miriam taking off her shirt, and I loved this part, sitting down and putting her legs up like the confident woman that she is. Definitely a very masculine thing to do. And yes. Sarah and Dr. Sarah being totally into it.
It was quite the power play.
Yeah, and in my reflection of vampires, I was also thinking that, you know, part of what makes them alluring is the things that they challenge. I mean, they obviously challenge the natural law of death and youth, and also their sexual restrictions like monogamy and heterosexuality, and because they vampires want companions, and with that companionship comes a deep intimacy. So, you know, obviously they would be physically intimate. So I don't know where I was going with that, but vampires do challenge that heterosexuality norm that a lot of us are growing up with.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Countless films and stories, at least.
Yeah, and maybe that's, like, again, echoing what you said, maybe that's what's so alluring about vampires is that freedom from societal standards, and vampires are always uber confident. You know, like they can do anything. Mm-hmm. I mean, look at Miriam, you know. As soon as she saw Dr. Sarah Roberts, she was like, oh, yeah, you're going to be mine. She didn't even try. She didn't leave her, she went to go to the book signing and she said, oh, hey, I wanted to talk to you about something. And she never followed up.
She came
she was
right
gone for
to
an
her
afternoon.
Yeah, she was like, and I'm going to go home and Sarah's going to come here.
I just wanted to say that their lifestyle seemed so cool. And then, like, what happens? I don't, like, she had a good thing. Catherine Deneuve, Miriam, both Miriam and John had a great thing going. And given the age thing kicked in and he became a corpse, but like, just keep doing that. Just like London Underground swingers. Going to music shows, picking up people and feeding. But that was a really cool lifestyle. And like you said, like vampires are kind of elitist in a sense because they've been around for forever and can do what they want and just transcend any societal standards because it's come and gone, you know, but they are constant.
Right.
And the confidence comes with that, like you said, but man, that would be so cool. It glorified vampires like nothing else has for me.
I have a question. I don't know if I missed this or not, but did either of you notice how Miriam's companions and Sarah as well kept running their hands through their hair? What was that? It was always the left side of their head too. She just like did this motion like with her hair. She just like moved it out of her face, and then I saw that the little zombie vampires a couple of them did that too, and they made the same kind of hand through the hair motion. First time I noticed it was, I believe it was when Sarah was giving an interview about progeria, and she made that motion, and that's kind of what caught Miriam's eye. And then I noticed her do it again later, and I was like, what is with that?
I had to Google it real quick. Stroking his face, raking fingers through hair. So they want to look good for their mate. So first of all, I did not notice that, but Holly, as I'm reading what raking fingers through hair means, it means that they're kind of preening themselves, making sure they look good for their mate. So so everyone's like, oh wait, what's up, Miriam? They want to look good for Miriam because they're her mate.
Wow, that's sad then. Like, even the ones that have been in their coffins for all this time, they're still doing that.
Yeah.
That just, okay, now I can understand Susan Sarandon's point of view way more. Like, just that you're still, like, imagine her doing that to you and you're still, I'm yours. Like, I will do whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, Miriam knows how to wheel him right in. Forever lover is a literal term.
She's not pro-choice, is what you're saying.
Well, let me ask you that. It looked like David Bowie was into it when she approached him in like the, I don't know, 1600, 1700, I don't know.
The only kind of background we get with them on camera is this like rehearsal scene of them in powdered wigs, obviously in the 18th century somewhere, and they're playing music together. So it's, I don't know, you know, I don't think we know what his backstory is and how he got kind of sucked into this whole thing.
Yeah, up until they showed that, I just was under the assumption that he was, I guess, the lead head vampire. If you know.
Oh, wait! You thought David Bowie was the lead vampire?
Yeah, up until they showed in the past, like her turning him. I thought it was him, and he was just like being uber possessive of her, being like, when you said forever, you meant forever, right? And it wasn't until then that I was like, oh no, it's her.
When he says that, she responds with like, what did you say? Like, trying not to hear him. She wouldn't answer.
Yeah.
Forever.
What?
Forever and ever.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, about that.
Okay, so yeah, let me ask you this. What are your thoughts on Miriam totally duping David Bowie into thinking, yes, you're going to be young forever. You're never, like, even after Sarah turns, She even tells Sarah, like, you're never going to age from this moment on. Like, again, lying to her forever lovers.
Yeah, that's super manipulative.
Yeah.
That's, no, not cool.
She's been doing this for 6,000 years. She knows how to do it. She knows how to play the game.
Yeah.
And then put him in a box.
You're mine forever. Your statement about not having a real backstory between David Bowie and Miriam, yeah, there's dialogue, but not just like descriptive dialogue or dialogue that lets you know what's happening. You kind of have to guess it for yourself. And the first time I watched it, you kind of understand what's going on. But it definitely watched it a few more times to really understand what's going on and why and what, what certain scenes mean, or why someone says, like you said, like Miriam going, oh yeah, I totally meant forever. Like, actually not really, but yes, to you forever in a coffin, but I didn't, she whispered that under her breath.
In my first watching, I almost completely missed the scene where Miriam invites over some kind of gigolo. Do you? But like, she just kills him. Sarah doesn't even get a chance to try out her new vampiricism, and then Miriam just proceeds to kill him and eat him, and there was just no point to it. It was just like, what's his name? I think his name's James Aubrey. He plays Ron. He's accredited to Ron, but I don't think his name was even uttered. And he just like looks at himself in the mirror, every couple shots in the scene, and then just dies. Like, I must have gone out of the room and missed the entire scene, because that was the extent of that.
Yeah, I loved his little like, oh yeah, thrust he did when she's like, fix yourself a drink, and then she goes upstairs. I kind of wish he was played by Bill Paxton, because Bill Paxton plays such a good, rowdy, rough around the edges, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get some.
For approximately 10 seconds of screen time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, again, like, definitely some confusing scenes, definitely scenes where I thought I missed something. It takes me a few watches to really understand what's going on. If you're confused watching this movie, it's not you, it's the movie.
I had another question. Sarah seems to almost get hit by cars a lot. What's with that?
I blame the New York taxis.
So let me ask you this. The first time that a Mack truck almost hits her, do you think it was Miriam? Because as Miriam was clutching her number and she was like, oh, Sarah, you're the next one. That was happening. That was kind of cutting back and forth between Sarah walking, being like, ooh, doing the Staying Alive dance. She got a little bit of strut. She's like, oh, I got a crush. And then she almost gets hit by a Mack truck, but it's like right after a cut of Miriam clutching her paper with her name and number on it. Do you think Miriam had control over that?
That's what I was thinking, but I don't remember what the context was when it happened later. And I was like, what was the point of it happening again? Like, the one time I could see, like, yes, there, Miriam had something keeping her safe or like doing whatever. But then the second time it happened, I was like, oh, if there was a continuing thread, I couldn't see one.
Because the other scene where she's looking for a taxi and she almost gets hit by one, but then she tries to get in one and some guy's already in it. And then she goes to a phone booth and we see a Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe!
Yeah. Hey, lady, And then even when she leaves, he makes a comment to his buddy. They're like, ooh, fucking junkies.
Which I guess first directed me to this film being kind of about addiction.
Yeah. The hunger. Yeah, and you even see, continue on with the addiction, you even see as Sarah kind of accepting that she is a vampire. She goes back to Miriam and she's in bed and she is sweating in the fetal position, classic addict trying to not feed that hunger.
And then eventually gives in.
Yeah.
Which I don't think we see on camera, but she kills her boyfriend, Tom.
Yeah, it was very quick. Like Miriam killing that gigolo dude, and then Tom showing up, and Miriam letting him in. I mean, I'm like, Miriam, you had blood all over you. All of a sudden, you're cleaned up, and then all of a sudden, he's upstairs, and Sarah kills him. But then, isn't there like a dead body in the elevator? Like,
I think that was the gigolo.
Yeah.
A lot happens in the last 15 minutes of the film.
Yeah. Yeah.
This film is structured very strangely. It is. David Bowie's character dies halfway into the film. And it just becomes this whole other thing and moves really quickly. And we all know about the end. I don't want to jump to the ending yet, but how it is disjointed from the rest of the film.
Yeah. Actually trying to like talk about the movie is becoming more of a challenge than I anticipated, and I think it's because the film is so damn artsy.
Yeah.
How can you talk about art? It's a feeling.
The flowy sheets.
Oh, the flowy sheets and Venetian blinds. So many Venetian blinds.
Did you ever find a number for the budget of this film?
I didn't. I did not find the budget. Some articles said the gross was like 10 million, but then IMDb said it was 6 million. So it made money, but I can't imagine it costs more than like $1 million to make it. You know, like most scenes were shot what looked to be in New York. Although actually, as I'm saying this, I remember reading an article that said that some money was taken away during filming and they had to find like a shady warehouse in Brooklyn, and they filmed the love scene, and some guy came in with a gun demanding more money and like yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Can you imagine? Yeah. So next time you watch this during that beautiful, like, what is it? Flower duet, beautiful scene of seduction, and as Susan Sarandon is lying on a bed with her heels still on, a guy coming in with a gun, and
that was a closed set too. There was only a skeleton crew for that. That would have been scary.
Yeah, but they did it, and they did it super well. Favorite scenes, Holly, what's your favorite scene?
My favorite scene is at the climax when Sarah kills her. And all these zombie vampires, you see them all, and then their decay, and it.
Whoa, wait! Sarah kills who?
Well, okay,
Miriam
kills in quotes Miriam,
but Sarah kills herself.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. That's totally what I meant. Because I was going to say,
does give a sweet blood kiss.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was a great blood kiss.
I had confused myself because the first time I saw this, I thought that she had stabbed Miriam. And then I was like, oh, okay, she killed herself. And then, yeah, the whole very, very end, it was, yeah, that just confused me with her. Okay, we'll get there. But, yeah, my favorite was basically seeing the zombie vampires.
What broke the curse? It's like Miriam started decaying, but what? Oh, so did the other lovers. The other lovers started to kind of fall apart when that happens. But like, what? Why did she do that?
I had questions about that, but the way it made sense in my head until the very final scene when you see Sarah, which we'll talk about. But in my head, I was thinking, okay, so the Miriam being the head vampire, she's however it happened, she's dead, and then that breaks the spell for everybody else, and they're finally able to rest. But I didn't understand why she started to age.
That was a hard fall from the stairs.
I was like, is it like death becomes her rules, where her body dies, so then like death catches up with her?
That was a nasty tumble.
Yeah,
that was because you're saying break the curse, and because she's now, and wow, like, again, now that I have to talk about it, it's like I'm confusing myself.
I wonder if that was in the original screenplay though, because the ending was changed from what we've read.
Yes.
But I wonder at which point, I think it was Susan Sarandon who said that the balcony scene was added, but I mean, it's just not, it's like something else was tweaked last minute. Because it's just not coherent.
So in the penultimate scene, Sarah cannot live with herself as an addict after she killed her boyfriend. So she has a sexy, bloody kiss, Q typo negative, with Miriam, and grabs her ankh, and Sarah stabs herself in the neck, and she's bleeding profusely. Okay. My question is, I thought that Miriam said you can't die the natural ways. So is Sarah even dead, or is she just like going to be bone dry? And then Miriam takes Sarah upstairs, right? Or during that time, as Miriam is mourning what Sarah did, the ex-lover zombie vampires get out of their coffins and start a riot.
Also,
and
some really cool practical effects of the ground kind of shifting and all the boxes sliding. I thought that was way cool.
Yeah. Do they like toss her over the stairs? Because they were like, you lied to us. Now we're going to rise against you.
She kind of just fell over herself, if I remember correctly. She kind of backed up into the classic. You back up into the railing and fall over.
a flowy sheet came. The flowy sheet knocked her over the railing.
There are flowy sheets.
Yeah. One of those pigeons came a little too close and it startled her.
That might be it. I'm watching it. I have it right in front of me, and I think it is a mix of it's right between the flowy sheets and the pigeon. She went right over.
We watched the replay and we have a decision on the field. Flowy sheet, pigeon. But so then she falls down, but again, like, she's a vampire, she can't die, so that's is this a death becomes her? But then she starts to get old and decay, and then the scene fades out to a rental agent greeting the cop who was looking for baby Alice, which we didn't even talk about.
I loved her character. She was
awesome. The rental agent, or the guy selling the house, greets the cop, and he says that they are gone and they're selling the house. And the cop stands on a bullseye, and then all of a sudden, that's where it should have ended, but the studio decided to add a weird end scene that makes no sense because they wanted to open the door for sequels. And the end scene is Sarah, you hear Miriam going, Sarah, Sarah. And
she's screaming in the box that she put her in, right?
Well, but that's my question is, you see Sarah in like some Italian apartment with a piano and two other people. So is she there with
ass girls too?
Yeah, with David Bowie and Miriam. But then the scene cuts to a box, and I'm like, whose reality is this? Is this Sarah in a box? Is this Miriam in a box? And who put her in the box? Like, who's in the what's again?
I'm pretty sure it's Miriam is in the box.
Yeah.
Because in the flowy scene, the balcony scene, there's like some new people. It's a new couple. who's smoking a pipe. But it's just some new young couple.
I was thinking she put Miriam in the box and she's like, hey, I'm going to take tips from what she did and I'm going to start my own life.
She becomes
Wait, you're
Miriam.
saying Sarah did this?
Oh, for sure. She totally
Wait, but
became
Sarah...
Miriam.
Yeah. She just...
okay. Whoa. Now you guys are... This is a sequel.
Yeah, she's seducing another couple to do the same thing, to start feasting on them.
Yeah.
So Sarah, but how did Sarah become the new Miriam if she
that's
herself
why
in the
it
neck?
Makes no sense. I have no idea. It's like if Miriam was the quote head vampire, how did Sarah usurp that role? And then how did all the other vampires get released if Miriam is still alive? Like, it makes no sense.
Oh, I will say hearing that explanation makes the ending, the final scene, make more sense, even though it doesn't make sense.
Right. Yeah. Like, if you stop the movie right before you see Sarah again, it's like, okay, just done. Like, turn the movie off. You're done.
But if you want to see The Hunger Part 2, Sarah's Hunger, then watch the movie all the way to the end.
Sarah's still hungry.
So that's interesting. So maybe when Miriam is in the box, all of her ex-forever lovers are set free, and then that's Sarah's first box of ex-lovers starring Miriam.
Oh, she's just starting the new pile.
Yeah, starting that pile. Oh.
I'm guessing in the original, like, not including the last scene, but I'm wondering if the Ankh was supposed to kill, like, only the stabbing of the Ankh could kill her. And that's why Miriam was so upset and the scene was so tragic, even though we as viewers, we know that they're vampires and they can't just die. So, like, why was that scene tragic? Maybe the Ankh was supposed to be her ending.
My take on that is Miriam always had willing lovers, and she never had someone who tried to off themselves. Like, everyone she had loved before was like, yeah, I'm totally down for this. Let's do this. And being having codependence issues, she could not handle the idea of someone leaving her, doing something like stabbing themselves in the neck. And maybe Miriam isn't fully aware of, the rules of, their kind of vampires.
Mm-hmm.
I just wonder what makes Sarah such a, so resistant to that allure and to the effects of her, to Catherine Deneuve. Oh.
Because she's a scientist.
Oh, is that? Okay.
Yeah. So, my favorite scene, and it's funny because after what we've talked about, right after their beautiful love scene, Sarah is having dinner with her boyfriend Tom, and I absolutely love that scene. I thought Susan Sarandon did such a beautiful job of avoiding questions and Tom asking all the right questions. It's like, okay, finally we have our characters telling us what the fuck is happening in this movie, and Tom is asking all the same questions as I would. Like, I love it when somebody asks questions that I would ask if I was in their part. Sarah does such a good job of just deflecting, and I love when he's like, you barely know her, and she's like, well, like, she's struggling with, this is weird, but I'm so drawn to her, and I don't, this duality of accepting this absolute love and lust for her, but then knowing that this is ridiculous at the same time. And I love how she's like, she's European. That just explains everything. I don't know. She's really European.
Those Europeans.
Don't ask me anything else. She's European. Case closed.
What's that?
What?
The chain around your neck.
Oh, it's an Ankh. It's Egyptian. Miriam gave it to me. Mrs. Blaylock, the woman that I went to see this afternoon.
You just met her and she gives you a present?
Well, she's that kind of a woman. She's European.
Did you have something you wanted to tell me?
No, about what?
What the hell is wrong with you? I mean, what happened today?
Nothing happened today. We just talked.
For 3.5 hours you talked.
You know how people are. They like to talk to doctors. And we had some sherry in these fancy little glasses. And then we talked.
You hate sherry.
I know.
It gives you a headache.
I know.
That scene eloquently cross-dissolved from, I think it was blood trickling down Miriam's arm or Sarah's arm from their sex scene earlier. And then it cross-dissolves to her cutting this rare steak. And it's just this beautiful, I loved it so much.
Yeah, it's a very pretty movie.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I think when you talk about it as an artsy film, it's hard for me to put it in that box. But if anything, it's tasteful cinematography.
Yeah.
Without bleeding too far into art film, it was just kind of a bad film. Often mistaken, but...
I mean, even us talking about this, we have the duality of we loved it, but then we also hated it at the same time.
So I have a fun little fact. The guy that plays Tom, Cliff DeYoung, he is in the sequel to the Rocky Horror Picture Show, Shock Treatment.
Ooh.
And so it's funny seeing him and Susan Sarandon together because I'm like, oh, because he plays Brad. I'm like, oh, it's Brad and Janet.
Oh, he plays Brad?
Yeah.
Well, they do a great job as a disjointed couple.
Yes.
So also during that scene where they're having dinner and we find out that Sarah has no hunger for food, but she's definitely, getting her cigarettes out, which, by the way, what was the cigarette budget on this movie? Everyone was cranking cigarettes.
Yeah.
Again, addicts to cigarettes. But during that scene, where are they? That's next to a pool, like a gym pool.
Yeah.
She keeps looking over and seeing
it's a nice restaurant
a naked
too.
body swimming. Yeah, it's a classy restaurant. I mean, they got clams. They got
a rec
steak.
center. It's like a rec center restaurant, 5-star.
I mean, clearly, Sarah, I was like, is Sarah imagining that, or is that actually happening out the window? And there is a big window.
Yeah, and
that
a
takes
grand
up half
piano.
the wall.
It's a nice restaurant.
Yeah, but I was like, are they in a hotel restaurant that overlooks their fitness center pool?
Yeah, that's what it felt like. But yeah, it's very, I don't know. It's weird.
That's the only thing that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
You're in a Marriott and you're at the cool prime steakhouse, but then it also overlooks the 24-hour fitness center. Following that scene, we see Sarah struggling and with what's happening to her body, and she pukes, and then immediately cut to the lab. We've got Doctor with Snapchat glasses on, Sarah, Tom, and then some other person, and they are taking care of business. They're looking at blood samples, which I was like, yes, you're a lab, you're a scientist, let's figure this out. And they immediately cut to the chase, and they say, your blood was mixed with someone else's blood. It's it's dominating your blood. We don't know what it is. It is disease resistant. Yeah, it's not human. Mm-hmm. And then, you have Sarah, who is obviously worried, but she's also like, I just need a cigarette. Don't talk to me. I got to figure this out on my own. That's the most information we get throughout the entire film.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's my favorite, because I'm like, all right, I know what's happening. People are asking questions. We're getting answers. We're doing lab tests. Let's figure this out.
And then right back to Miriam.
And then right back to
what
the heck is going on.
Yeah, I feel like we were given enough to answer, to get a nice story of this version of how vampires are created, but there were no vampire rules. And that...
What do you mean no vampire rules?
Like, what we were talking about before, when Miriam is she's aging, and I don't want to say she dies because stupid ending. When she's aging, and then everybody else is released, and then you get this tacked on ending that then has her still alive.
Okay. So you're saying, so I see what you're saying, because when you say vampire rules, I'm like, well, vampire rules are like they drink blood and they live forever.
Oh, no, like, yeah,
they break the rules sometimes. They definitely drink blood, though.
Yeah, outside of like traditional vampire rules, but you're right. Like we don't really know what the rules are in this movie outside of them having to drink blood once a week.
Right. I was thinking about its classification as a horror movie. And
yes, I was gonna ask this too.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. I was thinking that I can't classify this as horror. It's more of I would say it's drama, horror with some horror elements thrown in there. The thing that doesn't make it a horror film for me is that you don't have those rules. It doesn't focus on the vampire. It focuses on the lack of humanity that's going on, and then those drug parallels. So it's way more character driven.
It's just more lenient about all the rules of the myth and the
lore.
So,
it's like, we're not gonna really pay attention to these strict rules that we are going to tell the audience. We're gonna throw in a little explanation that's going to serve the narrative, but it's about these characters and their relationships.
So wait, Holly, are you saying that a horror movie can't have depth like that? They can't have
not at all.
And so wait, I'm okay. From what I'm hearing now, I could be. Please correct me. You don't classify this as a horror movie because it has too much character involvement. I don't know if I'm saying that the right way.
No, how do I explain it?
Because I want to say character development, but they did not develop the characters.
No, it's
because they didn't focus on the blood and guts part of it.
No, it's.
I think they just focused on too many things. So it focused on relationships for a second, and then focused on the drama, and kind of stuck there. But was just too kind of schizophrenic to.
Yeah, I think the way I see it, it's more like it is a story about these characters and their relationships and everything, and they happen to be vampires, rather than we have these vampires that we're going to develop and tell the story of.
So the vampire idea, the horror element of this is secondary to the relationship story.
Yes.
I'm super intrigued by this. And one thing that I personally love about horror movies is there are horror movies where it's just blood and gore and that's it, but then there are other horror movies that do get the horror genre connected to them that are so much more than that, I feel.
Yeah. And I don't mean to say this doesn't belong in a horror category.
Right.
Because there are tons of movies that kind of skirt the edge of is it not? Silence of the Lambs, I know, is a huge one. It's like a ton of people call it horror, a ton of people say it's not.
Yes.
So this, I feel like this is one of those that it's not going to. I know you brought up Interview with the Vampire before. This is not your, straightforward, rip your neck out, suck your blood kind of vampire movie. This is a character-driven story, and if the spectrum of horror is linear, it's going to lean toward the not horror side.
To me, it's just the emotion that's evoked that would be the defining element of a horror film. not. To me, this evokes not even the parts about addiction and bloodlust. Like, it evoked in the beginning some cool feelings, but later on only sadness, not a sense of horror or what's the word? But horror evokes the feeling of horror to me, or it tries to, at least. And this to me seemed intended on kind of the sadness and just the lowness of addiction and depression or codependence.
Yeah. Oh God, addiction is codependence. Kind of.
It is. Yeah.
That's what's I find so intriguing and amazing about horror, is that it can apply to any sort of thing. I mean, like, what is horror? What is scary? You know, what is suspense? Like, the idea of being addicted to someone, to something, to someone, you know? I mean, yeah. The idea of being locked in a box forever and ever and having every feeling and vibe, but being in darkness the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like that. I like watching these movies because it keeps you thinking, like, of yourself, like, just in your own head, like, what is horror to me?
Mm-hmm.
What is horror? What makes a horror movie? You know, like, for me, this would be lower on my is this horror list. For somebody else, it's going to be way higher. And I like that it can, for horror, it seems like it can be anywhere, just because it has it feels like it's more subjective than a lot of other genres.
Maybe the music, if anything, drove this film to horror, kind of pushed it into horror. There was some really excellent scores done, music repurposed. Also, waterphone, which is one of my favorite horror film techniques for music.
Yeah, David Bowie, I have a note here. He was excited to work on the film, but he was concerned about the final product. And he said, I must say there's nothing that looks like it on the market, but I'm a bit worried that it's just perversely bloody at some points. And I find that interesting because to us, and especially having it be 2019, like, this movie is far from bloody. Like, you have a little blood, but considering what we've all seen,
the blood kiss might have done it for him.
Oh, but it was so good.
It was
so good. Yeah, that was and going back to, that was one of my thoughts, is would I even consider this a horror movie? You know, if someone's like, well, I'm scared of horror movies, would this go into a category of, like, this is totally something someone who gets easily scared of scary movies could watch, but it's still in the horror genre. So
yeah,
they could easily watch it.
One quick note about the director, Tony Scott, youngest brother to Ridley Scott. Hey. And this being his directorial debut, before this, I read that he was doing a lot of commercials. So I think that kind of makes sense that this movie was short clips of good scenes, but not coherent all the way through.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this was kind of a flop in the theaters, and Tony Scott went back to doing commercials. I guess he did car commercials, and then a year or two later, he's directing Top Gun, and then more thrillers like The Fan, Spy Game, Enemy of the State, Man on Fire, and one of my favorite movies, True Romance. But those movies make a lot more sense than this.
Yeah.
I have a little tidbit to add on to the commercial bit. Both the Scott brothers, well, at least Ridley and Tony, were doing commercials at some point. And Ridley Scott was lined up to direct this film, but eventually fell out because Bowie was in it. And that was weird to me. And I did a little bit more research and found Ridley Scott directed an ice cream commercial in 1968 or 1969 in which Bowie starred, like a young Bowie starred in like, was playing in the band featured in the commercial. But I wonder, how bad could that have been to or whatever happened to have Ridley Scott like walk out on the fact that David Bowie's in the film.
Oh my.
So the plot thickens.
Oh, that is so interesting. Maybe
I have some questions.
Maybe that's why they're like, we're gonna kill David Bowie off real quick. We're gonna put him in old man makeup for most of the time.
The first half of the film was my favorite by far. I think it could have gone a different way. Actually, my favorite scene was the opening scene of the club and Bauhaus playing, and they're seducing the couple. They're finally in the apartment. They're making out, and the blood starts running, and it keeps being juxtaposed by like the sounds get crazy that cut in between the Bauhaus song and you also see the shots of the monkey eating the other monkey, start ripping it apart at the same. Oh, it was so well done. The film set such a precedent in the first 10 minutes, and just was all over the place, like changing the channels on different commercials or something.
Oh my God, that's
like
that is such a good way to describe it, because yes, it really did feel like, oh my God, this commercial's on. Let's change it. Okay, a different commercial doesn't make sense. Okay, let's change it.
Yeah, but it's all great content. It's just together. It's not coherent.
We're gonna wrap this up. Final thoughts? Anything anything anybody else wants to talk about? Any more questions that we can not answer?
Oh, I want to say really quick that the shot of them watching the monkey deteriorate, that was really cool. I really like that.
So practical effects were great in this.
Oh, yeah. Hold up.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like all the pieces were there, and for the most part it was good, but then there were definitely some off parts.
Yeah.
Everything. The actors, the performances, everything was great. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't coherent.
Catherine Deneuve and her slightest movements. I mean, just when she answers the door, when Sarah shows up, when she sees the bruise and she's like, it's a bruise, it'll heal, like whatever, Oh gosh, she was so good. Susan Sarandon was so good.
Yeah, she can shove me in a box. That's cool.
Oh God, and even like David Bowie just.
Oh my God, I know. One of my notes, I was like, he needs to stop being so sexy.
There's a great butt scene. There's a butt shot in the shower scene in the beginning.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, so let's rate this artsy, flowy flick. I say we rate it on Ankh necklaces.
Yes.
I'll give it a 2 Ankh necklaces.
Ooh,
4.
2 out of 5?
2 out of 4 Ankhs.
2 out of 4? Okay, cool.
Half of the film. That's all you get.
Why only?
Because
why
the first
only
half
2?
of the film was radical.
And then when David Bowie died, you were like,
okay, it kept me hanging on because of the scene after, but I would watch it again for sure. But I got to be honest about my Ankhs.
Mm-hmm. Holly?
I am giving it 3 out of 4 Ankh necklaces.
Nice.
I feel like talking about it, I may have sounded harsh or just unsure about how I felt, but I really did enjoy it. And I enjoyed that it got me more reflecting on just vampires and the lore of vampires and what kind of archetypes they represent in different media. And I was also thinking of, vampires seem like sad creatures, and I don't know, it just got me very reflective. And if anything, that's something that's going to stick if I watch this again. That curiosity is going to stick with me. And like I said before, like it's all the elements are there. It's beautiful to look at. It's has great music. The acting is amazing. But as a coherent story, it's not there. I enjoyed the story, but I wish it was just held together a little better. And it made me want to read the book, though. I looked on Audible. Unfortunately, they didn't have an audiobook, but I really want to read the book now and see how different it is. So yeah, I'm going.
Apparently, they go way more into the Egyptian lore in the book.
Yeah,
Is
I'd
it
be really
written
interested
under
in
the same
that.
title?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, The Hunger by Whitley Strieber. Yeah, I will also give it a 3 out of 4 because I enjoyed watching it. The actors did a beautiful job. It's an 80s movie. I love all the 80s gloomy, moody looks. I loved all the backlighting. You know, when I want a steamy, erotic thriller, this serves.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely satisfies that craving. Ooh, that hunger, you know? The few times that I've watched it to prepare for this, there are some scenes that I absolutely love watching. So I do find myself intrigued by it, almost kind of like Sarah Roberts being intrigued by Miriam. I'm like, oh, I want to watch this. It's in the background, but like I walk away, but then I'm like, wait, but what am I missing? I'm drawn back to it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Laundry will have to wait, but I gotta get back to this movie. So we asked our followers on the Facebook about what are some of their favorite vampire movies. Holly, what did they have to say?
Well, we got a couple responses. One is from Mr. Watson, if I can speak clearly. He said, a few of my personal faves. Interview with the Vampire, my personal fave too.
Yep.
30 Days of Night. Love that one.
Really good vampire movie. And
it is.
Talk about like the opposite of this, where it's just monsters.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let the Right One In. Only Lovers Left Alive.
I did not see that, and
I saw that. That was really good. Yeah. Stakeland.
Oh, I haven't seen that, but that's like a classic.
I have not either.
Oh, okay.
Fearless Vampire Killers. I love that movie.
I don't think I've seen that.
It's a Roman Polanski is in it, and Sharon Tate.
Ooh,
is also in it. Yeah. He also has Blade 2.
Not Blade 1.
Not Blade 1. The first 3 Underworld flicks, which no. I don't accept that.
That also brings in the whole like lycanthrope or werewolf lore.
Yeah. Habit and then Nosferatu. And Ellen has said, I will always have fond memories of the first Underworld. No. Just don't accept it.
Well, I mean, didn't Van Helsing come from Underworld? Or didn't Van Helsing kick off Underworld?
That's a good question.
I don't know.
Or wait, okay, maybe I'm just thinking that who's the girl in Underworld? Kate Beckinsale. Wasn't she in Van Helsing?
Oh yeah, she was in Van Helsing.
Okay, but she wasn't her Underworld character in Van Helsing. She just happened to be in vampire movies in general.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then he also said Blade. It took a different track with vampire action and made entertaining movies where the protagonist is one of those which he seeks to destroy. And What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh, that's such a good one.
It is. I love that.
So, okay, I know we're wrapping up the episode, but would you consider What We Do in the Shadows as a horror movie? Horror comedy?
Horror movie?
No,
yeah.
No way.
No.
No?
No. Well, I mean,
I know,
No.
right? The dilemma.
I mean,
what is horror then? Does it have to be
horror
scary?
is
Does it have to
definitely
be...
not the first descriptor.
It's a comedy first and foremost,
It
but
is.
it's also a horror comedy. It's like Deathgasm.
Yeah.
Would you consider
Like-
Deathgasm a horror movie?
I haven't seen that actually, but yeah, same thing with like Shaun of the Dead and
Yeah,
you
Shaun
know,
of the Dead.
yeah.
Comedy, but horror comedy?
Shaun of the Dead bleeds into
Comedy
horror,
horror?
for sure. A little more than What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, so then again, that it's one of those things where, okay, well, it has zombie elements, it has blood. You know, can a horror movie not be funny? Is a horror movie limited to
No,
being
you're right,
serious
you're right.
and scary?
Yeah. I don't know. Do we still have the mind of living in the Blockbuster era where it's like you can only find a movie under one place?
Seriously, where would Shaun of the Dead live in Blockbuster?
Yeah. Maybe that's why this is so hard.
Yeah, right? Right? Yeah, I mean, gosh, all right, if anybody works at Blockbuster or if anybody was in any sort of, I have to categorize this into one genre, how would you categorize Shaun of the Dead? It would probably be comedy because first and foremost, it's a comedy.
Not that Stephanie's trying
There's
to
only
sway
one
you.
more Blockbuster.
There is. Yep, just one.
Yeah. I don't know.
One
but
more. Somebody will get back to us.
yeah. I don't know. Let us know your thoughts. Holler at us on the Facebook, Instagram, and horrormelee.com. Send us emails, send us hate mail. DJ wants to be a vampire. If any vampires out there, go holler at us.
Listen to Bauhaus. Drink blood. Hey, thank you both so much for having me on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming and chatting with us.
Yeah. And thank you for listening. And we'll catch you on the next one.
What's that piece you play?
It's Lakme by Deneuve. Lakme is a Brahmin princess in India. She has a slave named Malika. In a magical garden, they sing how they'll follow the stream to its source, gliding over the water.
Is it a love song?
I told you, it was sung by two women,
Sounds like a love song.
and I suppose that's what it is.
Are you making a pass at me, Mrs. Blaylock?
Miriam.
Miriam?
Not that I'm aware of, Sarah.